Hey dear friend, Friday, July the 7th, 2023. How are you doing today? I'm just want to continue on through this amazing book called Disturbing the Universe by Freeman Dyson. I'm making progress here. We went through chapter 2 called The Redemption of Faust. He talks about his upbringing, and he talks about his development of what he calls his cosmic unity theory, and extremely well written. We move on to chapter 3 called The Children's Crusade. He's referring to his time in the war. He gives an account of when he went to work as a scientist for logistics during World War II for England. Some of his quotes, he says, "Anger is creative, depression is useless," on page 26. Excellent quote. Just extremely well written, extremely lucid. This guy really knows how to write for a scientist. I mean, it's just amazing. I don't know who his editor was or how much help he had. I'm all the way up to chapter 5 called The Scientific Apprenticeship. I'm just going to see if there's any points that jumped out at me. Sometimes he gives a hint to the reader of his awareness of Christian principles. For example, on page 27, he says, "Mike was no respecter of official taboos." It's a slight nod to the phrase, "God is no respecter of persons," right? So a Christian would know that language code, you could call it. Page 30, he says, "Technology has made evil anonymous." Very insightful statement, and I'll put these in the description. Chapter 4, The Blood of a Poet. He talks about some of his contemporaries. I mean, the guy worked with Albert Einstein, Oppenheimer, and things like that. His scientific credentials are just off the chart, and I had never heard of him, Freeman Dyson, right? In the end, it is how you fight as much as why you fight that makes your cause good or bad. Something to think about. Again, on page 42, "There's an ominous cloud in the distance, though at present it be no bigger than a man's hand." He's quoting somebody else, and that person is also giving an homage to a biblical statement. So it's nice to see those sprinkled in there, here and there. And again, he talks about the development of the atomic bomb. He made the statement saying, "Once we had got ourselves into the business of bombing cities, we might as well do the job competently and get it over with." So he talks about his moral dilemma of trying to justify his actions in his work for the war effort, and the stages he went through, and continually needing to justify himself to clear his conscience, so to speak. And you can see the inner turmoil that he went through, and he lets the reader know that his soul was tortured because of it. So chapter 5, he goes in and he talks about his academic career after the war. He says here on page 49, "I measured the electric voltage produced by light of various colors falling on a metal surface and found that Einstein's law of photoelectric effect is really true." Some of the stuff this guy worked on is just off the chart. And the people that he worked with, like Robert Oppenheimer and this other scientist by the name of Hans, what's his name? A bunch of them. There's a bunch of them here. Lomanitz, Hans, I forget his last name. Millikan? But anyway, I'll find it for you. But nothing too dramatic. But to see the relationship between his upbringing and his consequent accomplishments. You know, there's this phrase that people use today. They say, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to raise a village idiot. When you see two parents that dedicate themselves to being 100% focused. He's from a wealthy family. His father was independently wealthy as a garment manufacturer in New York, and his wife, his mother, sorry, his father and mother both poured themselves into their children in terms of providing them learning materials, teaching them multiple languages, teaching them mathematics, teaching them classic literature to read. And this paid off in the development of his mind. You know, the first 5, 6 years of a child's life, if the parents put their total focus on raising that child. I mean, we see birds and they raise their children. They're totally focused on feeding the little, you know, creatures in the nest, the baby birds in the nest, and that's their focus every day, providing food. You know, today we don't have this sense of how important raising children is. We think that as soon as the kid gets old enough to put them in a kindergarten or to put them in a public school or even a private school for that matter, we think like we're doing the children a favor by doing that. Even in my own mind, I remember the first day at school, and some of the kids that were there were kicking and screaming because they were so scared to go to school. For some kids, they look forward to it. The parents, you know, teach them it's going to be great. They'll have toys to play with and all that, and they go to kindergarten, and it's a great experience for them. But for a lot of kids, it's very traumatic. They can't handle that. But my point is that when you see an example, as this gentleman here, that his parents dedicated their full-time lives into raising their children. Now, they were in a position to be able to do that because the husband was independently wealthy and he allowed his company to be run without him being there. So he had other people, you know, to manage his business for him. And likewise, the mother, similarly, right? And he talks about how they spent time together and talking, and he's sharing his thoughts with them, and they're giving him positive, constructive feedback, a loving, caring home where the child was actually the focus of learning and development. The parents weren't stuck with their own struggles of selfishness and drug addiction and trying to be happy. That was all set aside. That they poured their lives and their effort and their educational directive towards the children in such a way that the children, their contemporaries, were people that spoke half a dozen languages, that had advanced levels of mathematical ability. And these are the type of people he ended up associating with in later life, because they all reached that level of giftedness that to a large degree, now I know that there's a certain amount that is natural innate ability, and once you reach that barrier, it becomes more a situation of genetic. But you got to think it starts from the womb. You know, the mother wasn't drinking or smoking. You know, those parents were dedicated parents. That was the most important thing to them, was to pour themselves into their children, and they did that for the developmental years, and it allowed this individual to be extremely accomplished person, in spite of the fact that he was forced to use his talents in military applications for part of his life, which he greatly regretted. He was still able to make great achievements in the field of physics and mathematics in ways that helped humanity on a peaceful basis. But so that's a different story. All I'm talking about here is the actual capability that this person had, largely in part you can see from his parental guidance that he was lucky enough to receive. And so it really blew me away. And the writing and the quality of this person's presentation of his ideas and thoughts is off the chart. Like, this guy can write circles around so many so-called writers, and he's not really a writer, he's a scientist. But like I said, I don't know if he wrote this all himself or not, but it is extremely well written. There's no ghostwriter mentioned, and there's no I don't see any editor mentioned. He says that he wrote this based on the questions that he received from his students while he was teaching at university. So I have to take it that this was actually written by Dyson himself. And, he was professor of physics at Princeton, right? He had 5 daughters, a son. Very distinguished career. He lived until his 90s. But anyway, I'll share more with you as we go through, because I'm just eating it up, and it's really an amazing. I can't recommend this enough so far, but we'll see what other gems that it holds within it. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I'm making progress, and hopefully I can get this through this book in the next few days and try and distill some of the valuable insights that it contains, so I can share them with you and put them in the notes below this video. Thank you for watching. God bless you. I love you. Hope you have yourself a fantastic day. And thank you for your support and for supporting my channel. And we'll talk to you again real soon, okay? Be good. Have a great day. Enjoy the fresh air. Bye-bye now.